Just to note, programming note, tomorrow at 1:15, there'll be an in-person briefing by Reem Al-Salam, the Special Rapporteur of Violence Against Women and Girls, its causes and consequences, following her presentation to the third committee. As you heard earlier today, the Secretary General welcomed the announcement last night of an agreement to secure a ceasefire and a hostage deal in Gaza based on the plan presented by President Donald Trump. Speaking to you, he urged all parties to fully abide by the terms of the agreement and fully embrace the opportunities it presents. He said the UN will provide its full support. We and our partners are prepared to move on now. Supplies are in place. Our teams are in standby, as you heard from Mr. Fletcher. But the Secretary General added that we need a full, safe, and sustained access for humanitarian workers, the removal of red tape and impediments, and the rebuilding of shattered infrastructure. The Secretary General urged all to seize this momentous opportunity to establish a credible political path forward. And just to stay on Gaza, just a bit more numbers from our humanitarian colleagues who are finalizing the preparations as soon as conditions allow. The UN's 2720 mechanism secured clearance from Israeli authorities for about 170,000 metric tons of food, health, and nutrition supplies, as well as shelter items and other critical aid. That's all in our pipeline. These supplies are currently in the region, mainly in Israel, also in the West Bank, in Jordan, Egypt, and Cyprus, and they're all ready to be shipped to Gaza as soon as partners submit more supplies for approvals. OCHA tells us that the humanitarian community's initial response plan for the first 60 days of the ceasefire prioritizes the restoration of community-based and household-level distributions and services, which is a proven way to reach the most vulnerable. Partners are set to increase support for local food production, malnutrition, screening and treatment, the restoration of essential health services, repair for the decimated water grid, and a massive surge in emergency shelter provision, among other things. Just to note that our Deputy Secretary General, as you know, is in Belgium, where she's attending the second edition of the Global Gateway Forum in Brussels. She's doing that on behalf of the Secretary General. In her remarks to the meeting, she highlighted the strong partnership between the UN and the European Union, delivering on humanitarian response, climate action, and the protection of human rights. With only 5 years remaining on the 2030 SDG clock, she underscored the potential of the Global Gateway to accelerate SDG implementation on the ground. To keep delivering at scale, Ms. Mohammed emphasized the urgency of closing the $4.2 trillion annual SDG funding gap, scaling up climate action to limit strong warnings to below 1.5 degrees Celsius, and upholding the rule of law and territorial integrity in Europe and everywhere. On the margins of the forum, she met with senior EU officials to discuss strengthening UN-EU collaboration to drive progress on the SDGs and the Pact for the Future. This evening, the Deputy Secretary General will head to South Africa to participate in the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation Drakensberg Inclusive Growth Forum taking place in KwaZulu-Natal. Is that okay, Sherwin? Okay, thank you. This morning, our Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grunberg, and the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Joyce Masuya, briefed the Security Council in close consultations on the situation in Yemen. Later in the afternoon, Khaled Kyari, our Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific, will also brief the Council on close consultations on UNDOF, which is our peacekeeping mission that is tasked to maintain the ceasefire between Israel and Syria. And meanwhile, as global attention is drawn to many pressing events, I don't want us to overlook the tragic situation in Sudan, most horrifically in El Fasher, which is, you know, the besieged capital of North Darfur. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that since the start of October alone, more than 50 people have reportedly been killed. That's what medical association and local sources are telling us. We, of course, condemn this escalation of violence and the killing of innocent civilians. The Sudan Doctors Network said that yesterday at least a dozen civilians were killed, including women and children, with 17 others injured in an attack on a hospital in El Fasher allegedly carried out by the Rapid Support Forces. This follows reports of a deadly attack on the hospital's maternity ward on the previous day. The people of El Fasher are trapped, terrified, and cut off from aid, and their last lifeline for medical care is under threat. It goes without saying that the targeting of hospitals is to be condemned and never acceptable. We're also alarmed by reports of a deadly attack that happened yesterday on a mosque where families in El Fasher had sought shelter. More than a dozen people were reportedly killed, and if you'll recall, last month, a mosque came under attack in which 70 people were killed. Humanitarian law is clear. It demands the protection of religious sites and those who worship in those sites. Meanwhile, we and our partners remain committed to supporting the people of El Fasher and all those impacted by the conflict across Sudan. However, humanitarians need rapid, safe, sustained, and unimpeded access, and civilians, including frontline responders, must be protected. An immediate humanitarian pause in and around El Fasher is urgently needed. Turning to Ukraine, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that over the past 3 days, several civilians were killed and injured across Ukraine. Most civilian casualties were recorded in Kherson, Sumy, Donetsk, and Kharkiv. That's what local authorities are telling us. Our humanitarian colleagues also note that Ukraine's energy system remains under sustained pressure. Substations, power plants, and oil depots were all damaged in the regions of Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, and Donetsk. Those attacks temporarily cut off electricity to hundreds of thousands of households and businesses. As colder weather sets in, strikes on critical infrastructure are deepening humanitarian needs. Despite growing challenges, we, along with our humanitarian partners, are continuing to support the response. The first half of this year, our health partners provided essential care to nearly 1 million people, while food and livelihood programs supported over 1.1 million displaced and vulnerable families across Ukraine. And turning to Haiti, our friends at the UN Children's Fund tell us that the number of children displaced by violence in Haiti has almost doubled in the past year. There are now 680,000 boys and girls who've been uprooted from their homes in Haiti. Overall, as we mentioned here before, more than 1.3 million people are currently displaced in the country. UNICEF's Child Alert adds that about a third of the 246 displacement sites nationwide lack basic protection infrastructure, leaving children, women at heightened risks of violence, exploitation, and abuse. Schools often double as shelter, furthering disrupting education for nearly 500,000 students. UNICEF is calling for urgent international support to scale up assistance protection for displaced children. The agency's appeal for Haiti remains severely underfunded, as we've been telling you. And today, the Elsie Initiative Fund for Uniformed Women in Peace Operations launched its 4th programming round with a new call for proposals to advance inclusive peacekeeping. The Elsie Initiative was set up in 2019 to promote women's meaningful participation and to implement gender-responsive approaches to peacekeeping. Hosted by UN Women, today's event brought together senior UN colleagues, member states, partners, donors, and highlighted the results from projects supported by the fund in Senegal, Uruguay, and other places. Applicants to this new round of proposals include troop and police contributing countries, UN entities that wish to apply for funding to implement or plan barrier assessments, institutional reform, or the deployment of gender-strong units. And today is, besides Thursday, it is World Post Day. Grab a postcard and send it to a loved one. In his message, the Secretary General said that today and every day we thank the 4.6 million postal workers around the world, and we recommit to supporting a strong, sustainable postal service for communities around the world. Ms. Fasullo.
Thank you, Steph. Apropos of the UN's role in the new Gaza deal, do you anticipate that the SG will be traveling to the region or perhaps even meeting with President Trump?
I don't have any travel to share with you at this point.
And one other thing I realize, the SG noted in his statement that all hostages must be released in a dignified manner. And I know he's mentioned this before. Is there any role that the UN may be playing in facilitating that?
Right now, our understanding is that the details of how the hostages will be released is is being worked out. We're, of course, ready to assist in any way that we may be asked by the parties. Sherwin.
Steph, thanks. There are some reports out today that Iran, quoting Iran's first Vice President Mohammad Reza Aref, as saying that the Secretary General told him during a meeting in Turkmenistan in August that the SG believed the 12-day conflict in June had closed the file on attempts to topple the Iranian government. Can you confirm those remarks? And if the SG expressed a view that the war in June was in fact an effort to topple the regime in
No,
the government in Iran?
I cannot confirm. I'm not able to confirm that the Secretary General would ever have said that. I would refer you to the readout that we issued on August 5th, which I think is an accurate description of what was said in the meeting from our side.
And you just announced that it was World Post Day. I wonder what World Post Day means in the 21st century.
Well, I, for one, still love getting a letter in the mail, a postcard. That is not a bill. Farnoosh.
Thanks, Steph. Wondering if, Mr. Fletcher didn't have time, but wondering if you guys have been told if GHF will have any role in this upcoming, and will they work alongside the UN?
Look, I'm not aware of them having any role. Our standards for working with partners are unchanged, right? Independence, humanitarian, the fact that getting aid shouldn't increase your risk of getting killed. All those things stand today as they did before. Yes, sir. And then Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph. I didn't have a chance to ask Mr. Fletcher a question about, as now we are talking about the food supplies and the emergency relief and everything and essential health supplies. Is there any provision to allow for mental health experts and specialists to get into Gaza after 2 years of brutal war?
Of course, I mean, the issue of mental health is at the forefront of our efforts. Even during the fighting in the last 2 years, outside of the ceasefire periods, our colleagues were offering psychosocial support in the best way they can, and it is part and parcel of humanitarian assistance. Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph. I know you don't have any travel to announce, but does the Secretary General want to visit Gaza?
Yes, I mean, the Secretary General has wanted to visit Gaza and would be keen to visit Gaza.
And and it's still your understanding that Israel still reserves the right to clear the cargo coming into Gaza. Is that correct?
I mean, all these details are going to be worked out, but I think based on past experience, that would be our expectation. But again, we are having a lot of discussions with Israelis and others on how to be able to bring in the most amount of humanitarian aid as quickly as possible. Jordan.
I did not attend this morning briefing by the SG, unfortunately, but I read his statement twice last night. Something missing from the statement. It was very comprehensive, very nice, but he forgot the Palestinian prisoners. Yet, if you look at the 20 points plans by Mr. Trump, it's clear. It's one point that the Palestinian prisoner will be released. Why the statement is not mentioned?
Look, I think this is an issue that we have talked about, that we have called for the release of the Palestinian detainees, and we welcome it as part of the deal. Pam.
Thanks, Steph. There have been several reports about, and as part of the ceasefire, an international force is being developed. Have you heard anything about it? How will it interact with aid deliveries? What are you hearing, especially?
I mean, we're obviously seeing we're seeing the same reports that you are. I think that's still a little bit away. We hope that whatever is developed will allow and create space for humanitarian delivery to be done along the basis that we've always done them, which is not in a militarized setting.
And Just to be clear, the international force for the recovery of deceased hostages.
Oh, the issue, that we've seen our reports. I don't see how that would interfere with humanitarian aid.
Thank you.
Lenka.
Thank you, Steph. So President Trump has said that the UN Secretary General has never called him to congratulate him on deals. Is the Secretary General going to call him, or has he already called him?
I will share with you any connection on that end as soon as I can.
And follow up, because they might ask as well. Any update on the escalator investigation, please?
No, ma'am. Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Steph. So the Secretary General called on all parties to abide by President Trump's plan. Can we assume that he finds the deal to be fair? That's why he called on everyone to abide by it?
I mean, the deal was agreed to by the warring parties. This is what counts, right? And that's why he's welcomed it.
Does he have any issues with the content of the plan at all?
The Secretary General is not a party to this, right, to this conflict. Through the efforts of President Trump, through the efforts of Qatar, of Egypt, and Turkey, we've gotten a deal. The important thing now is that all the parties abide by it. For our part, and our responsibility with this deal is the delivery of humanitarian aid, and I think you heard from a very passionate Mr. Fletcher to explain what we're ready to do and what we will do as soon as possible. Abdelhamid, and I'll come back to the room.
Thank you, Steph. Yesterday, the settlers attacked the village of Deir Jrir, north of Ramallah, killed a young man, Jihad Muhammad Ajaj, he's 26, and wounded the 3 Palestinians. Why there is no separate statement to condemn such a heinous crime by the settlers?
I have not seen a report on this particular case, but I can tell you we have repeatedly, will continue to condemn settler violence against Palestinian civilians and against their agricultural lands. I think we talked about that yesterday pretty much in detail, about the attacks against the trees and the saplings as well as civilians. Chris, and then Edie, and then, yep, go ahead.
Hey,
Chris.
Steph, has the Secretary General had any communication with President Trump, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, or President
not
Abbas
not in the
today?
last 12 hours, but things have been moving fast.
And then in light of National Post Day, has the Secretary General sent any postcards today?
I do not know. All right, Edie.
Thank you, Steph. A follow-up on the timing of an upsurge in the delivery of aid. From what Mr. Fletcher said, these talks with the Israelis, and it'd be nice to know who in the UN is actually doing that, is going on, and this great upsurge that he's announced is really dependent on the results of those talks.
Of course, I mean, the point person on the ground is Ramiz Alabkarov, our humanitarian chief for the OPT and the acting head of UNSCO. He is in more than daily contact with COGAT and other parties. We will have to continue to work through the system that's in place. Our hopes is that the amount of space that we're given will grow exponentially in the next few days.
Is the United Nations expecting the United States, Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey to actually pressure for this surge in aid?
That would be very nice indeed. Dennis, and then Deji.
Hello, Steph. I have a question about Ukraine. I want to raise a Bucha topic. So what's the position?
What topic?
Bucha.
Okay.
What's the position of Secretary General about provocation in Bucha, and how could you comment on the Russian side, regular requests for needed data necessary for the investigation?
On Bucha, I can tell you this is a topic that is often raised in the discussions between the Russian Federation and the Secretary General. It was raised by Foreign Minister Lavrov just a few weeks ago. There is information that we have, and there's information that we do not have, and that we cannot. There's information that we do not. Excuse me. There's information that we do not have, and this we clearly cannot provide. There is information that the UN has, which is information that the Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights have, and they have certain ways to proceed with that kind of information, and the way they are guided is by a set of important principles, which includes ensuring informed consent and respecting confidentiality. They only publish or share information with explicit consent of victims and witnesses. And I can give you a bit more detail, but all of these constraints that are faced by our human rights colleagues have been it's been a long day, have been communicated to the Russian authorities, both by OHCHR and by the Office of the Legal Counsel. Alex, and then Deji. Sorry, we'll get to you, Deji.
Thanks, Steph. Quick follow-up. You just mentioned that the Secretary General had no contact with President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu for the last 12 hours. What about 24 hours?
I can tell you that in the last 36 hours or so, or maybe 40 hours, the Secretary General, and to honor the day that we're honoring today, has sent a letter to President Trump, talking about the express intent of the United Nations of him to work with the U.S. on a number of peace initiatives.
Yeah.
It was sent. It was a letter that was sent. Now, I don't think it was the letters that are sent are usually sent via the permanent mission, so I'm not sure they qualify for International Post Day. No, ma'am. Deji, very patient.
Yeah, on the letter, it's 40 hours, which means the talk is still going on. So the
It was prior to the. It was not pegged to the announcement, which only came late yesterday evening.
Okay. My question actually is also on the peace deal. Maybe it's not a good time, but we know that hundreds of people, hundreds of humanitarian workers, journalists passed away, and we have tens of thousands of people died during the 2 years conflict. Will there still be accountabilities?
There needs to be accountability, but I think the reality, let's be honest, is that accountability in international conflicts takes a long time. But it doesn't mean that we are allowed to give up or allowed to stop pushing for accountability. On that note, Islam, I'm sorry. On that note, I will take Islam's question.
Thank you, Stéphane. I have two questions. One is about the financial aspect of the humanitarian aid. Mr. Fletcher called for the financial support from the member states. Mm-hmm. So far, since ceasefire was on the air, has UN made any contact with the donors, any commitments so far?
I don't have any commitments to report, but again, this is, all of this happened in the last 12 hours. But as you know, the UN can't print money, the UN can't borrow money. So when we have an operation, we need to ask for money. So again, we have humanitarian appeals for the OPT. We will no doubt be in touch with major donors. And also there's various ways for the public to support UN's humanitarian agencies.
And if I may ask second question, I know the ceasefire details are not really, we don't know, at least I don't know, but when the Israeli forces withdraw from the certain areas, the Palestinians, Gazans, can go back where they were forcibly removed from. Because there was a video, some Palestinians, they were trying to go to north and the Israeli tank fired them. What is
What
UN take
we
on that?
hope is that the Palestinians in Gaza will be able to return to their homes and be safe in their homes or what remains of their homes. On that note, oh, sorry, Fatih, quick one because I'm really hungry.
Quick. UN cannot print money, but can the UN issue its own crypto coin?
No. On that note.